What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the channel. Today we're going to be bringing you our updated tier list for the leaders. Now that all the leaders are announced in Star Wars Unlimited, we've gotten to play with all of them. We have some ideas of where we want to slot them as far as the tiers go, and so we're going to go ahead and show you what we're thinking. As you can see on the screen here, you're going to see all the leaders, but all the leaders are going to be going away in a second. We're going to be bringing up the leaders on the screen so you guys can see them a little bit better, as well as go over their abilities as the leader units and as just the leader itself, just so you guys can get a better understanding of why I kind of put things where I do. I want to thank everyone for support so far on the channel. It's greatly appreciative as always. If you are new here, consider subscribing if you are enjoying the content, and let's get underway. So I'm probably going to go ahead and start from the bottom and then go up, just because it's probably better that way. But starting off, I really only have one leader on D, honestly, and that's going to be IG-88. Sadly, listen, I'm not going to lie, I kind of like playing in the IG-88 Trooper deck. I feel like in draft, it could be actually pretty decent. It's not too bad, but in standard or like normal play, this is not the best leader. It might actually be the worst leader. As a leader, for an action, you can attack with a unit. If you control more units than defending player, that unit gets +1/+0 for this attack. Now, the issue is with that is that a lot of aggro decks are kind of a thing now, and your opponent is probably equally playing as many units as you are, if not more units. So the likeliness of this getting off consistently is just very low to me, and it's pretty rough. I do like the leader because IG-88 is a really cool character, but it's just not the best leader when it comes to Star Wars Unlimited. And then when it becomes a leader unit, each friendly unit gets raid 1. So that's actually not too bad. And you can get it out if you control 5 more resources. So it's not the lowest epic action cost, but still 5's not too bad. It's just, it kind of falls short against other aggro decks and just other decks in general. So that's why I kind of had to slot it in D. As much as I like IG-88, he's just not it. Not gonna lie. We're gonna go into the C tier because honestly, IG-88 was really the only D tier in my opinion. I'm gonna go into the C tier, and let's start off with Jyn Erso. Now, Jyn Erso, honestly, I actually thought that she was gonna be better when she first came out, and like, you know, I originally had her in B. At least if you guys have seen my last tier list video, but for an action, attack with a unit, the defender gets -1, -0 for the attack. That's not too bad. Like, it allows you to kind of take out things while trying to keep your guys on the board, right? That's pretty good. And then epic action, if you control 6 or more resources, you can put her out as a leader unit. And then when friendly units attack, the defender gets -1, -0, right? So like on all of your attacks when she's out on the field, it kind of provides you with that protection with -1. But it's not as controlling as I thought it might have been. It's just not as good. She's still fun to play. Like, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I actually enjoy playing probably all the leaders, and Jyn Erso, I just don't think that she's as strong as other leaders. I still think she's fun, but C is where I'm gonna put her. Getting over to the other Rogue One leader, we have Cassian Andor. Now, everyone loves draw power. It's kind of like, you know, always a lot of fun. But for an action at the cost of 1, if you've dealt 3 or more damage to an enemy base, draw a card. So the cost of drawing the card, I wish that it said if you've done damage to an enemy base, you can draw the card. That's kind of where I'm at. I think 3, though, it's like not a crazy number. I just think that early game, you're not going to be getting this off as much as you maybe might want to, because if you could be getting just based on damage itself, maybe he would have been a little bit too overpowered, because getting that draw power early might be kind of crazy. But and in red, right, you have a lot of things, but raid doing the 3 damage is not that bad. But I don't know, I just felt like wasn't as good. The draw power wasn't as consistent and sustainable. And then as a leader unit, right, if epic action, 6 resources, you bring him out. He has Saboteur, which is actually not too bad. Being able to attack while there are sentinels on the other person's board, be able to attack their base is pretty good. And then when you deal damage to an enemy base, you may draw a card. but you can only do it once each round. So as a leader unit, he's more consistent with his draw power, which is pretty good. And, you know, to the mid-late game, you kind of want to have more draw power so you can kind of have more options. But still, I just think that there are other aggression units that are better than this, and we're going to kind of go over those in a bit. But Andor is just not as good as I thought he was going to be. When I saw that he was going to be able to get you like draws and stuff, I thought that it was going to be a little bit better than it is. It's not like it's terrible, but I just think that there are better leaders. So I slotted him in C. One of my favorite leaders. I've talked about this in the past. I think Star Wars Unlimited did a great job with this leader in terms of kind of making him what he is in the show, right? And that's going to be Thrawn. I'm putting Thrawn in C. As much as I love Thrawn, and I think he's probably one of the most like control-y decks. Like when you think about control, this is the deck that I think of, right? So when the action phase start, you get to look at the top card of each deck, right? Your own and your opponent's deck. And then if you're playing with multiple players, you get to look at everyone's top card, right? Card knowledge, always good. And then for the cost of 1 in an action, reveal the top card of any player's deck. Exhaust a unit that costs the same as or less than the revealed card. So you're able to look at everyone's top card, so you can kind of try to play around the top cards of people's decks. You get to exhaust units every turn. It does cost a resource. So you have to kind of decide, like, is it better to exhaust something this turn or to use up all your resources to kind of play stuff, right? And then the way that they made this character where Thrawn is one step ahead of everyone. So you're able to see what they have and play and exhaust and kind of make it so you can live longer because you can exhaust the threatening units on your opponent's side as long as you are revealing things that cost more than what they're costing, right? So it's just a lot of fun to play. As a leader unit, right, if you have 6 or more resources for the epic action, you still get to look at the top card of every deck, but instead on attack you may reveal the card and then exhaust. So it makes it so it's free. You just have to attack. So the only thing is like you're playing cards in this deck like Waylay, other things that suspend, and you're no good to me dead, right? So you're playing cards like that, and then I like to play command with him, although Vigilance is probably better to play. I just like command, to be honest, but Vigilance is also really good. The thing is, if he was a command unit, I think he might be a little bit better, to be honest. Like command and Vigilance, I feel like would be like a crazy good combo for him. I think if he might have been command, it might have just been better, because being able to play command Vigilance with Thrawn, I think might have been a little bit more fun. But nevertheless, I do think that Vigilance is a pretty good and fun deck. It's like a very controlly deck. I do think that this deck slots in at C for what it does. Like, it's a very controlly deck. Control starts with C, so I put it in C for that reason. No, but in all honesty, I do think it slots in at C because the other decks, the aggro decks, yes, you can suspend and exhaust those units, right? But still, faster decks kind of, if you can stop Thrawn from getting to his big ships and stuff like that, then you are in a really good spot, because obviously he won't be able to drop down the big units. So I still think Thrawn's in C. I just think that this is actually probably my favorite leader card as far as the accuracy to the character. So moving on here, the next C tier unit, another Rebel character. I actually thought that I was going to be playing this deck a lot. I still love this deck, to be honest. I think that she's extremely, incredibly unique in the fact that she gets to ignore aspect penalties for Spectre units or Spectre cards. So, because there are events that are Spectre as well. With the newly announced Ghost, is that going to be enough to kind of move it up a tier? I just don't think it is. But when she's a leader unit, epic action costs 6, or when you have 6 resources. On attack, you may give an experience token to other unique units. So you're able to kind of boost up your other Spectre units. I love this deck. I think it's a lot of fun being able to play like kind of like a rainbow deck, because you can kind of use tricks from every color, because every Spectre unit, it kind of covers the board. They haven't announced a Spectre unit in command other than Hera, which I'm kind of thinking that they might. Maybe they'll do Callus. I know they already have Callus, but as the Imperial, but maybe they'll do one as a Spectre unit. Or there are a couple other options they can do, right? But I just think that this deck is incredibly fun. But as far as going up against the decks that I'm going to be putting above it, I just think it's like a tier below. And again, that may change based on what cards come out. I just think that it's just a C tier deck at the moment because you're kind of relying on a lot to get you to your like highest potential. This deck, you have to play a lot of Spectre units onto the board, and that may be a little bit hard. Going into probably the final C tier. As much as my buddy Matt loves this guy, and if you guys watch the videos, you guys probably know who I'm going to put it up here. I'm going to go ahead and slot Chewie in C. Now, it's not that Chewie's bad. He's actually, again, a lot of these cards, I don't think any of them are really bad. Maybe IG88 might be a little bad, but it just slots down here because, one, I'm going to talk about the 7 cost for epic action. That to me is a little bit high. It's hard for Chewie to really be able to take advantage of what he wants to do, right? For an action as a leader, you may play a cost of 3 or less. You have to pay its cost, but it gets Sentinel for the face. So it does provide you with protection at pretty much any given time in the match. So if you are like in lethal strike, you can maybe buy a turn or something like that. Or if you want to protect certain units and you don't care about a unit in your hand that costs 3 or less, you can go ahead and drop a Sentinel. As long as they don't have a Saboteur, they'll have to attack the Sentinel and you can protect other units, right? And then again, epic action, if you have 7 or more resources, you can deploy him. He is a Sentinel, which is good. He has grit, which is cool. Every damage that he takes gets added into his power. He starts off as a 2/9. And the issue is that by the time he comes out, it's 7 resources. There's a chance that your opponent has a pretty established board if you're not keeping it under control. And a lot of times I found that Chewie comes out and dies the same turn that it comes out. Because if your opponent is playing against a Chewie deck, they're kind of keeping the resources in their hand to get ready for when Chewie is deployed. Because the thing is if Chewie does end up living with 1 HP and he's able to dish out 10 damage attacks, and you can kind of try to keep him alive with that much damage on him, or if you power him up with equipment and stuff like that to make him more sustainable, he does become a huge threat, and he can do massive damage to someone's base or be able to potentially take out a ton of units, being able to take damage and then dish out a ton of damage back to your opponents. The thing is that I do find it that he is taken out more often than not when he is deployed, and then it's just like that kind of stunk. But he is fun to use because one of the fun combos that we like to use the Millennium Falcon with him. You put out the Millennium Falcon, it gets Sentinel. If it survives and takes a hit, you just bring it back to your hand and do the same thing next turn. It just gives you that Sentinel that's actually kind of strong for a 3 cost, and kind of protects you in space. Because I do think that in the game, majority of the fighting and the majority of the decks are focused around the ground units, and space is just kind of like the added in stuff for a lot of decks. Not saying all the decks. But having Millennium Falcon being able to get Sentinel, protect you in space, and then also just being able to do that multiple turns in a match is pretty good. So Chewie slots in as the final guy in C, and I'm okay with that. I just think that if it was a 6 cost for epic action, he might be a little bit higher. It's just the 7, I don't know. And also, I just feel like, again, he's targeted quite frequently to the point where he just is taken out before he can really pop off. Let's go into the Bs here. This is a character that I had in D at the start. I have to talk about him because heavily slept on. This might be my next deck list video, honestly. I have a lot of fun with Grand Inquisitor, but I also think he's really, really good. For an action, deal 2 damage to a friendly unit with 3 or less power and ready it. So you can actually attack on your first turn into someone's base, and you can get off, start the game running. It's really good. And then 6 for the epic action, and then on attack, deal 1 damage to another friendly unit with 3 or less and ready it. So there are a lot of good low power units that you can use this on. The speeder bike guy with grit, really good. I love, that's the best turn. I like to play him with vigilance, right? And then be able to first turn, right? You play the speeder bike, you go ahead and you deal 2 damage to him, so he gets up to the 3 power because of grit. And then you can attack your opponent's base, and then you can also give a shield if you're using the base that gives a shield. I always do. And then you can essentially get to do that again next turn without the fear of killing it because it has the shield. It's just really good. Honestly, like, there are a lot of units you can do that with. Things with grit and high HP for vigilance units. It's just a lot of fun. It works really well, obviously, with Fifth Brother. So that's a lot of fun as well. You can also give that a shield using the base if you'd rather do that. It's just, there's a lot of combos you can do, and being able to ready up your unit and get multiple attacks in a turn is really good, and being able to get off a turn 1 attack is pretty solid in my opinion, especially if you get it off with something that does like 3 damage because of grit. Like 3 damage turn 1 is pretty good, especially because a lot of people do run the 25 HP bases, and you're taking out a pretty good chunk on turn 1. So again, I slept on him when we first saw him, and that's mainly because maybe he didn't have the support, but now he has that support, and you know, he's pretty solid. Let's go ahead and talk about one of my favorite decks, Tarkin. I love Tarkin. I think he's great. For an action, you can give an experience token to an Imperial unit, so it allows you to power up units, and I kind of went over a deck list not too long ago. If you haven't checked that out, go ahead and do so. I went over a Tarkin Trooper deck, which is actually one of my favorite ways to play Tarkin. And then on attack, you may give, when he's a leader unit, on attack, you may give an experience token to an Imperial unit. So it's just on attack, and it doesn't cost anything anymore. He comes out epic action if you control 5 or more resources, which is not too much. He's not strong, right? He's not doing a lot of damage, but his main thing is making his troopers and other Imperial units stronger. He's a ton of fun. Also, he's command villainy. Overwhelming Mirage, that's always a great time. But he is one of my favorite decks to play. He was actually the first deck I ever played, and I thought that he was a lot of fun. And he's a B because like he's just out there giving out experience. There are other leaders that do more than he does. But I do think that he slots really good at B. And again, he has potential to take out any deck above him. It's just, I think he fits comfortably at B. Still one of my favorite decks to play. Probably will always be one of my favorite decks to play because it was probably was my first deck I ever played, so maybe that's why I'm a little bit biased. But nevertheless, a lot of fun, and definitely play it. We're gonna go into the next leader here. We're gonna go Han, and I think Han slots in at B. I think Han's very unique. For an action, put a card from your hand, play it as a resource, and ready it. And at the start of the action phase, you have to defeat a resource you control. He is crazy good because he's able to play a cost of like a unit that costs 3 on turn 1. That's crazy. He can also play R2D2 and C3PO on turn 1 together, so that's also really good. He's being able to play a 3 cost or 3 resources worth of things on turn 1 is extremely powerful. And then Han Solo as a leader on attack, put top card of your deck into play as a resource and ready it. And at the start of your next action phase, defeat that resource. It's kind of the same, but I said that you don't have to use an action for it. It's on attack. So he's just pretty solid. You're also able to do cool combos with Mace Windu and getting him out a turn earlier as an aggression deck, right? If you're playing cunning and aggression, it's the only way to be able to do that, cheat out units early. So he's a lot of fun. He's very good. Again, it's really the turn 1 getting off to that fast start is really good. So I think he slots pretty good at B because he does you're kind of waiting for the card. Like you want the cards in your hand that you need, and there are times when you don't get it. And so that kind of what sets him back a little bit in my opinion. But again, he's very strong. He's very good. And B, I think is pretty good spot for him. Going into the next B tier unit, the final announced card, Emperor Palpatine. Now, he struggles heavily against aggression decks. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He does struggle, but if you can get him situated and set up, you can make him do really fun things, and he can be really powerful. For an action, defeat a friendly unit, deal 1 damage. Yeah, deal 1 damage to a unit and then draw. You have to defeat a unit, and that's kind of what the setback is. But you deal 1 damage to a unit on the board, and then you draw a card. So getting draw power early on is pretty good. And then the extra damage, it can come in clutch because you can deal damage to your opponent, and then when you have 8 resources, you can go ahead and put him out as a leader unit, and then when deployed, take control of a damaged unit. So what you want to do is you want to ping something that you want to take over and then bring him out and take it over. It can't be a leader unit, obviously, but still, it can be really powerful. And then you may defeat another friendly unit on attack. If you do deal 1 damage, draw a card, just more draw power. The thing that sets him back is the fact that it costs 8 to get him out. Right? You have to have 8 or more resources to deploy him. You pretty much have to play ramp to make this deck effective, because you're using Sleep Release Technician to go in, give you extra resources faster. You're using Resupply. And in my instance, I play double command because I want to get him out as quickly as possible. So I'm playing command as well to be able to put to play it for 4 and get out my 8 resources as quickly as possible. But again, it's crazy because being able to take control of an opponent's unit is really valuable. I think it can possibly swing matches. And again, I made a deck list for this. If you haven't checked that out, go ahead and do so. I showed off in that game. My opponent had a Saboteur. I had a bunch of Sentinels on the board. Well, actually, I had 1. But he had a Saboteur unit, and I was able to ping it for 1 and then take it over. And he lost his Saboteur, and I was able to come back and win the game because I was able to take over his Saboteur, the only way he was able to get over my Sentinels. So there are fun things you can do. There are a ton of combos you can do. And I just think that Emperor Palpatine, he's a lot of fun. People might argue he should be C because he does take a while to get going. But in my opinion, I do think that B is a good spot for him. And so that's where I'm going to put him. We're going to go into the next leader for the B tier. Imwe here, I put him into B because he's actually really unique. During as a leader unit, for an action, you can give someone 2 HP for the phase. That's not bad because it allows you to potentially live a hit and be able to still do damage to your opponent's base or take out that unit that hit you and survived. So that's pretty good in my opinion. It only costs 5 resources, or you only have to have 5 resources to bring him out. And then during the action phase, this unit isn't defeated by having no remaining HP. So if you can find a way to get him back up to 1 HP after he goes down to 0, it's pretty interesting because he can stay on the board longer than intended. And that's what makes him a lot of fun. You can go ahead and you can attach him with sabers. You can attach him with equipment. And then essentially he's borderline invincible as long as you keep on making it so he has 1 HP by the end of the turn. And then he can start taking out everyone's ground units. Because he only starts off with 3-5. But again, if you're going to be giving him equipment to keep him alive, he becomes an issue. It's a lot of fun to play him because, again, you might think that you defeat him, but it's not the case because he can come right back. So I think that what they did with this character is pretty unique and a lot of fun. I slotted him in at B. Now, the next 2 units, they're like B+, A-. So I didn't know where to put them. I'm going to flat out tell you Eden and Krennic, right? Those are kind of like ones that I'm kind of on the fence about, right? Now, Krennic, I'm going to probably put these in B for now, right? I'm going to kind of put them in B for now, and we're going to kind of talk about why. I'll put them both there for now. Just because they're like counter decks, in my opinion, right? So we'll start off for Krennic. Each friendly damage unit gets +1, +0. A lot of units do get damage, especially the vigilance units. A lot of them have grit, so this is a really good way to make them even stronger. If you control 5 more resources for the epic action, you can deploy this, and then you have Restore 2, and you get to keep each friendly unit gets +1, +0. The Restore 2 is really powerful. It allows you to kind of live a lot longer, and then again, there are a lot of grit units you can take advantage of with this, and I think that it's a pretty strong deck. And again, this is another deck that I had slotted pretty low in my initial tier list, but with all the support that's come out with it and stuff like that, I do think it's in B. It could easily go into A. And I'm sure people are going to blast me in the comments saying, hey, listen, he should be A. I just think in my experience, I put him at B. I think it's just a really good leader. But the cards going in A for me might be, in my opinion, in my experience, a little bit better. And then Eden, she's really good against like the aggro decks like Sabine and Leia and stuff like that. She comes out shielded, which is good. But for an action as a leader, if an enemy unit was defeated, deal 1 damage, heal 1 damage from your base. So it allows you to survive a little bit longer against those aggro deck, or you're going to be using your units to swing into their units to take them out, and you get to heal in the process. So that's why she's good against those decks. She comes out shielded, and when an enemy unit is defeated, heal a base for 1. So again, you're going to be defeating. If an enemy unit is defeated for an action, you heal as a leader. And then if an enemy unit is defeated, heal 1 from your base as a leader unit. Your main thing here with this deck is to defeat your enemy units and heal up your base, making it so they run out of units to attack you with, and then you kind of have units and you're healing at the same process, right? It's pretty good way to kind of stop the aggro where they're just coming at you, attacking your base, attacking your base, attacking your base. They might be afraid to attack your units now because it'll put them in vulnerable positions to lose those units and you'll be gaining. So I do think that she's a really good counter for aggro, but I slot her in at B. It could easily go into A. I might move her at the end. We'll kind of go over it at the end, but let's continue here. We don't want to spend too much time because we are kind of going pretty long, but let's go ahead into the A tier decks now. I still have Vader in A. I think a lot of people might have him in B, but Vader Command Ramp deck, in my opinion, is extremely strong, and you can pretty much win matches with just him on the board. So if you ramp up and you use the conversion lab to get the super late technicians into the resource zone faster using resupply and stuff like that, it's extremely powerful, and all you have to do really is get on a saber on him and he's able to pretty much do some crazy things. His combination with Mahdi to be able to ready himself after he attacks to deal extra damage, he's just really strong in my opinion. And as long as you can get him out, and there are ways to get him out really early as turn 3, it becomes a lot for your opponent to handle. And I just think that he's still an A tier unit in my opinion, and one of my favorite decks to play. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I still think that Vader is an A tier unit, so I'm going to kind of keep him in A. Going into the next one, we have Leia. Leia here, obviously for an action, you can do attack with a rebel unit and then attack with another rebel unit, and then when you deploy her, she has raid 1 and does the same thing. When she attacks, you get to attack another rebel unit. With other cards coming out that also help heroic units with the aggression aspect of things, being able to attack with other rebel units. There are cards that attack multiple cards at once. She's still an A tier unit. She's really good. One of the fastest decks because you're attacking with multiple units at the same time. She's just really strong and deserves to be in the A tier. I don't see her leaving anytime soon. I'm going to go ahead and slot Luke up. For an action, if you have played a heroic card this turn, you can go ahead and give it a shield, but it does cost 1 in an action to do so. And then as a leader unit on attack, you may give another unit a shield token. So Luke, for his leader unit, it has to be played that turn to be able to give it a shield, so keep that in mind. But when he is a leader unit, you may give another unit a shield token. Doesn't have to be played that turn. A really strong way to be able to dish out shields, keeping your other units around longer. It's what makes him really good. He's a lot of fun to play. Another thing to note is that I think that Fantasy Flight did a great job making Luke and Vader really viable characters, because they are the starter deck characters, and so you don't have to go through a ton of packs to get usable leaders. You can just get the starter decks and have 2 really strong leaders. Now, this is where I kind of struggled, right? You kind of have 2 leaders left, and I like to kind of keep 1 in S at the moment. Obviously, you're going to have the meta. You could easily put these 2 decks in S tier, in my opinion. Boba Fett is stronger aggression deck, and then Sabine, in my opinion, is a little bit faster because of the pressure that she puts on by doing damage to the bases every turn, right? So you're doing damage to the base. Again, turn 1 damage is really good, and you can do that with Sabine. You're also taking a damage on turn 1, but still, you're trying to be as fast as possible. You're trying to do as much damage as possible as early as possible. And Sabine is just really, really fast. But Boba Fett being able to re-ready resources, talk about how valuable that is. Being able to, when an enemy unit leaves play, you may exhaust this unit leader, and then if you do ready a resource. So it can be returned to the person's hand. It can be defeated in any way, shape, or form. If an enemy unit leaves the field, you get to ready a resource. And that being said, this is a good counter for Palpatine, because now Palpatine has to decide, do I want to go ahead and defeat my own unit just so I can draw a card and deal 1 damage? Because then Boba Fett gets to ready a resource. So you have to kind of decide, you have to do it before Boba Fett uses any resources. It's like Boba Fett's extremely strong, and then obviously when this unit completes an attack, if an enemy unit left play this phase, ready 2 resources. That's just really strong. You're able to extend plays. It's really, really strong, which is why, like, it's just really powerful. And which is why I kind of slot Boba Fett at this point into S. I just think that he's extremely strong. Boba Fett Command, Boba Fett Aggression, those are 2 really, really strong decks. I kind of want to also put Sabine, as much as I said I don't want to have one, like I don't want to have more than 1 unit in S. I also think Sabine is really strong. And I think that this is kind of like where I'm leaning. I can kind of slot these up 1. And I think that that might be okay, because these are 2 really strong decks as well, because they are really good against a lot of decks that will be played, heavily played. So I think that this is kind of where I'm leaving it. Again, these are like A-, B+. So like, to keep that in mind, in my opinion, these 3 are the A tier. These 2 decks, I think, just are extremely powerful, extremely fast in terms of Sabine. The play, being able to extend plays with Boba Fett is just extremely strong, and I think that he also deserves to be in S tier. But yeah, so that's going to do it for our tier list. If you guys have any disagreements, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know where you would slot certain things if you don't agree with what I was saying. And then also, if you guys are new here and you guys are enjoying the content, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It's greatly appreciative as always. And with that being said, we're going to go on and get out of here. A little bit a longer video as terms of the tier list go, but I just want to talk about each leader and how I kind of thought about it. So with that being said, we're going to go on and get out of here, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.